without further ado, I'll announce our first moderator, Christopher Gavalden, who's the Executive Director of the Linked Learning Alliance. Will come forward. He'll be the moderator for our first panel, and I'll let Christopher introduce the panel to you. Thank you. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. We did have a fabulous session yesterday in Sacramento, and we're looking forward to another one in Los Angeles tomorrow. As Russ said, today is and isn't about the Career Pathways Trust. It is around upping our game in California around what we're delivering on career pathways generally. And so what we'll be talking about today during our opening panel and the rest of the day will have a lot of implications for our vision around the Career Pathways Trust, but it will be equally applicable for those that are preparing their applications for the Federal Youth Career Connect grant that's due on January 27th. For those who are retooling your local control accountability plans to deal with the college and career metrics that are embedded there. For the many districts I see in the room who are participants in the AB 790 district-wide linked learning program that the Department of Education is shepherding as well as a variety of other efforts. And so this is the Career Pathways Trust is one element of a set of tools and resources and strategies that many of the folks in the room I know are already engaged in. And it's great to see so many folks from districts, from colleges, from individual schools, from the business community, from the workforce investment system in the room today. So we're pleased to have a terrific panel. Really lucky to have some key leaders in California that are driving this work and are making it not just possible, but setting the table for success in delivering a system of career pathways at the local and regional scale for all students. So I'd like to invite them to come forward now for the panel. We're joined by the Deputy Superintendent Lupita Cortez Alcala, Russ's boss from the airplane that we've already heard about. She leads the Instruction and Learning Support branch at the Department of Education, which is responsible for both college and career, also Common Core, and virtually everything else that matters. So welcome to Lupita. State Senator Darrell Steinberg, the President Pro Tem of the California State Senate, the leader of the California State Senate, who we will hear from in a moment, has been really the strongest and most committed, I can just use the pig, committed legislative champion for career pathways and linked learning in California. Also by Deborah Blue, who is the Chancellor of the State Center Community College District, one of the largest community college districts in the Valley, and in addition to her leadership here in Fresno and throughout the region, her work in Contra Costa and at Laney College, and through the accrediting process in driving much of this change has also become a model statewide and nationally. And we're joined by Tim Rainey, who's the Executive Director of the California Workforce Investment Board. And Tim is one of the national leaders in bringing together systems of employers and educators in the workforce investment system to really leverage high quality, high impact regional systems that support career pathways and stronger local economies and workforce systems. So we've got a great panel. I wanted to start with just a rapid fire question to get our blood going. Just ask, we're here, but why should we care? Why should we be interested in career pathways and systems of regional career pathways? Maybe start with you, Deputy Superintendent Alcala.
Well, there's this chicken and this pig.
There's always a chicken and a pig.
Sorry, Russ. Okay, no, seriously though. It's incredibly important. We have a responsibility to educate students so that they're career ready. If coming out of the recession wasn't a wake-up call, so now we really need to focus in on what students need. It's a lot of what Russ just said earlier today. It's preparing students, it's workforce development, it's economic development. It makes sense for the students, it makes sense for your regions, it makes sense for the industry. So it's really time for high schools, secondary schools, and post-secondary schools to talk to each other and to talk to industry in their region to really prepare students. It's quite frankly, it makes sense, it's our responsibility, and it's their right, really. Thank you.
Senator Steinberg.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a road show here. This is the second time we've done this. I'm hoping we'll open up on Broadway at the beginning of the year. Fundamentally for me, as an elected official, I believe that we must redefine education reform in our state and in our country. We all like to talk about reform, and certainly that agenda has been dominated over the years by an important set of issues, but frankly, a narrow set of issues. We debate how easy it should be to dismiss teachers who aren't doing a good job. We spend endless legislative hours in debate about what a teacher evaluation should look like and its link to test scores, whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing. And frankly, I feel like we are missing the forest through the trees in California and in the country, because those debates, as important as they are, fail to ask and answer a more important question. What are we teaching, and how are we teaching it? And is it relevant to what we expect young people to do once they presumably graduate? And that's why this agenda is so exciting to me, because we know we have a skills gap. We know that we have a dropout problem. We know that employers are complaining that we aren't producing enough educated and trained graduates. We know we have a great community college system, but it isn't linked well enough to the K-12 system, and specifically the high school system. We have too many 20-year-olds who either aren't on the pathway to a 4-year degree or don't have a 2-year professional or technical degree that allows them to begin thinking about a high-wage job in the workforce. And so this agenda cries out from every angle to me, and I hope to you, as what we ought to be leading with. Connect education and the economy and create pathways, not just high school, but beyond high school, for young people to maximize their chance of success.
Chancellor.
Well, that's kind of hard to follow because both of you have said it all. But I would say that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to do a couple of things as community colleges. And that is to really break down our silos and begin to partner with one another across the region. And the second opportunity is to collaborate more closely, as already has been said, with K-12. We have to get away from finger pointing and say, why didn't you do such and such in K-12? And begin to say, we are a community college, and when a student leaves high school, before they leave high school, that we should be fully engaged with the K-12 system in creating pathways that allow students in high school to move to training for jobs or whatever that next step is for them. And we cannot do that alone. We have to do it together. The time is now.
Well, I should start out by saying, yesterday we had the same setup. We were up on stage, very exposed and vulnerable to the audience. And you guys might remember that I worried incessantly about what socks I put on that morning. I bought new socks yesterday. I did, these are brand new, so I'm okay. I'm not going to worry about the socks. I can focus on the topic at hand. And Daryl Steinberg also clearly has nice new socks. It was all said. I think what I'd add is, at the state level, the Chancellor's Office of Anton Quinlivan, who helped to kind of spearhead doing what matters, which is fantastic. The Employment Development Department, the Superintendent's Office, Lupita, worked very closely together with her and Russ, and the Employment Training Panel, Division of Apprenticeship Standards. We've been, for the last 2 years, a year and a half, really focused on an agenda or a vision for the state of California that could really align the broad workforce development, employment services, and job training system. So this provides a great opportunity to really do that. I mean, it gives us more of a reason to come together and bring our systems together in a comprehensive way. There are 3 components to that, I think. One is sector strategies. We all talk about sector strategies. We got to stop talking about it and start doing it. Sector strategies doesn't mean that you are looking at data and you kind of know where the jobs are going to be and you change your program somewhat to meet that need. Sector strategies require deep engagement from employers. If you don't have, and not just one employer, it can't be a one-off. It has to be multiple employers in the sector you've identified as a target. they have to be at the table investing meaningfully in the work you're doing so you create the bridge from the programs to jobs. That's one. The second one is one voice. The education and training community tends to all chase employers separately, right? We're well, business people in the room? We drive you crazy? Are there business people in the room? All right, good. Do we drive you crazy? Good, drives me crazy. We need to come together behind one vision, one strategy at the regional level, and all go to employers and to sectors with one voice together. So on the public sector side, education and training side, we've got to get our act together and go with one voice. And finally, it's the regional coordination. This can be driven from Sacramento, rather. California is a bunch of regional economies. The state economy is not a monolith. Each regional economy, many times, competes globally. So this has to happen at the regional level behind a vision at the regional level. So those three things. So it's a great opportunity to do all these fantastic things we've been talking about for a couple of years.
So Schreiber, let's wind the tape back a little bit, because we talked about the importance of career pathways, but they haven't taken off statewide or nationally up until recently. And we used to hear things like, it's hard to do because it's not in the API, right? If I'm a principal or a superintendent, I gotta get my API numbers up and it's not there. So career pathways are great, I think they're wonderful, but I've got to focus on that. Or I'd love to do that, but I've got these categorical programs. I've got all my money is tied up in these different silos, so I can't make those investments. Or I'd love to do a high quality career, college and career pathway, but if we do an engineering math course, UC and CSU won't accept that course for their administrative accountability. You've been tackling those and other kinds of issues like that. Could you tell us a little bit about the work that you and your colleagues in the legislature have been doing to try to drive a state vision around career pathways and systems?
Sure. The pendulum, of course, in public policy often swings back and forth. And for now several decades, California has had a well-regarded, and the country's had a well-regarded standards-based movement to improve and increase the standards so that young people get the academic underpinning for their futures. There have been complaints over the same number of years, though, that movement has squeezed out what used to be vocational education. That it's hard for kids who don't want to go to four-year college to find a niche within the public school system that provides them with the pathway. And in the political context, it's become a little bit of an either-or. You're either for high standards or you're for more practical, what they used to call vocational education. And what we have tried to do over the last couple of years in California, and it's really been over the last 5 or 6 years, is say that the either-or will not work for California or the country. That it's not just about high standards or career-based education, it is the integration of the two together and across the board. This movement has had a lot of different names. Voc Ed, Career Tech Ed, Linked Learning, Career Pathways, and Linked Learning and Career Pathways are great. We've gotten away from Voc Ed, and frankly, I've gotten away from Career Tech Ed, because we're not just talking about tech anymore. What we're talking about here is trying to integrate across the board high standards with career pathways at the same time, so that every child's education, regardless of whether they're going to be a doctor, a health technician, an engineer, or a construction worker, that they have an integrated education experience that teaches the core subject matter in a way that relates to what they are interested in. So how have we tried to go about doing this? In 2000, whatever the years were, several years ago, we recognized that so long as 100% of high school's academic performance index is based on standardized test scores, which was not the original intent, by the way, of the API, that there would be no incentive systemically for educators to broaden curriculum to teach in different ways. Because if you're just required to teach the test, a lot of that's not purposeful, by the way. And of course, there are exceptions, but the system responds to the signals. And so we tried to change the API, and I introduced a series of bills. The first one that was famously vetoed by the governor, which said that test scores can be no more than X% of the API. Finally, in 2012, the governor signed my 1458, which limits test scores to no more than 60% of a high school's API. The other 40% are still being developed by the State Board of Education. We are pushing them to include not only graduation rates, but also rates of admission to college or apprenticeship programs, or to professional certification programs. They're still working on this, and it's complicated, but the idea here is that if those things matter as well, there's going to be a greater incentive then to develop more courses that are both A to G rigorous, but at the same time taught in applied ways. Once we did that in 12, and then the budget turned around, working together with Superintendent Torlakson and the legislature and the governor, we said, all right, how do we build on that foundation? We've done two things. We have SB 1070, which is, how much money is that? 100 million or so? Something like that? 40, thank you. 40, 60, 100, whatever, you know. What I do know is that the Career Ed Trust Fund, which we were able to put together, and that is the subject of a lot of excitement now, and one of the reasons why we convene here today, we got $250 million. And even though this is the largest state in the union and 250 compared to other states, you know, I don't know how it equates, but it's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money, the most in California's history, to be able to take this foundation and to be able to create school industry partnerships that begin in high school, but don't end in high school. Every 20-year-old ought to be on a pathway to higher education or have a certificate based upon what they've done high school through age 20 to be able to go out of the workforce if that's what they choose to do. That's our goal, and that's what we want to see in what will hopefully be very impressive applications once the request for applications is out next month.
All right, so at the top level of the state, you pulled back, you've removed a lot of the obstacles that used to be there to this high-quality integration and the notion that every student could be college and career ready. And then follow that up with a non-trivial amount of money to be able to support initiatives and work at the local and regional level to make that happen.
Yes, but I want to reemphasize something Tim said a moment ago, which is that the role of state policymakers is to, yes, set policy that essentially establish incentives, and then to seed. That's the way I look at my job, seed. We seed a lot of things. The 250 is a seed. How it grows depends on how we take the opportunity and actually implement it. And that's regional, that's local. That is the ingenuity and the energy of industry leaders and school leaders to impress. Because, well, we'll get to then what the one 250 can lead to a second 250.
We're not going there yet.
We're not going there yet. There we go.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with how modest you are about this topic, because in addition to what you just said, what you didn't say is the amount of support that has been provided through the legislature and the department for not just the maintenance, but the dramatic expansion of the California Partnership Academies, which are really the seed corn for a lot of this work, and models that are sprinkled throughout California that show it can be done anywhere. We talked a little bit about the curriculum integration for A to G, but when we started this a few years back, there were 500 courses, I think Russ would tell us, the career technical courses that you could qualify for A to G. Now there are over 12,000. That's a dramatic change. And so many of the reasons that we used to say why it's a great idea, but it just can't be done, have fallen away largely because of leadership at that level. Lupita, maybe you could add sort of some of the other state level policy changes that are helping to drive this work.
Sure. You know, as I said before, the last forum is that this is sort of the perfect storm. Not only do we finally coming out of the recession, but the legislature, Governor Senator Steinberg's efforts, we have the funding as well. But in 2010, as you know, we adopted the Common Core state standards. And what that was about, that initiative and that effort, is college and career readiness is front and center. And what it's hoping to achieve is changing the curriculum so that there's more critical thinking, analytical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and teamwork. And those are the 21st century skills that industry says they need and they want. That's the lack of skills that students are not coming to the table with. And so, and just recently, the state board has also adopted the next generation science standards, that it's much more experimental and laboratory work and hands-on, very different from the former, very tied to the Common Core standards, very tied to the same critical thinking, analytical thinking. And we're just this next year, this Smarter Balance assessment is coming on board, and it's going to be assessing those things. It's going to be a lot different. And so we're preparing for that. The legislature and the governor, of course. We're also behind the $1.25 billion that we all received to implement the Common Core state standards. So he is being quite modest and humble, but there's been a lot of effort through the Senate and the legislature and, of course, the governor in providing you the tools you need. And it's never enough, clearly, because we're coming out of this recession and $20 billion of cuts. But he has another year, so we're hopeful. In addition, the superintendent, when we came on board a few years ago in his first term, said career and college readiness is quite frankly going to be one of his priorities. And so he created the college and career readiness initiatives. And we have 18 of those, and we've been checking them off slowly but surely. This is clearly one of those efforts that we definitely want to pursue and he wants to pursue. I feel like I'm forgetting, the CTE standards. So we started also this effort a few years ago in that we have that, and we are using the term career technical education standards, but we started this effort through Russ's shop to align the career technical education standards with the Common Core standards and the 15 fastest growing industries in the state. And so we have the resources and tools, and now with the curriculum changing, the movement is really to engage students, is to make the curriculum rigorous but relevant. So what we're asking of you is to not just teach the Common Core standards, but teach it in a way that are rigorous. I mean, how many of you have experiences either with your own kids or as educators? High school students don't understand how algebra is relevant to their lives. They don't understand how English 10 is relevant to their lives. But if it was in a pathway, like health or bioengineering or criminology, something they're really truly interested in, and you can articulate that and with a sequence of courses throughout high school and into the community college and with industry with an internship or work-based instruction, I mean, how valuable and how essential could that be for that student? So I think that at the state, like I said, curriculum-wise, instructional materials, professional development, we're moving in that direction through the Common Core state standards because they're anchored in college and career readiness. And through the state's commitment with the budget, I think this is the perfect storm, and you have an amazing opportunity to really take advantage of it if you want to move in that direction.
So for high schools and for K-12, it sounds like it's a complete re-envisioning of the orientation towards college and career readiness, this kind of integrated pathway work. Community colleges aren't standing still on this work either. Maybe Chancellor Luke, the Doing What Matters and some of the other initiatives that the system has been undertaking, in particular what we've been doing here regionally and locally, how are the community colleges heading in the same direction?
Thank you, Christopher. I serve on the Economic Development and Program Advisory Committee for California Community College Chancellor's Office. And so it's nice to be here today to represent our Chancellor, Dr. Bryce Harris, as well as our Vice Chancellor, Von Ton Quinlivan. And thinking about how to share with you the new direction that we're taking in community colleges, I spent some time yesterday with our regional consortium chair, who's a part of State Center, and said, where did this nautical linguistic system come from that we're using? And talking about deputy sectors and navigating, navigators and deputy navigators. Well, we couldn't figure out where it came from, but I can say it's a really good idea because it shifted our thinking about workforce and economic development. It used to be the case about 15 years ago when I served on the same committee that each community college system was just interested in determining how they could get more money than another college district. Now what we're doing instead is focusing on these 15 regional economies across the state, as Christopher referred to, as well as Lupe. And so there are 10 different sectors that our colleges focus on based upon what the industry and employer needs are in the region of California that we serve. So in our central region there are 7 sectors that we're focused on, and it requires us to be more closely working with and tied to our workforce investment boards, to be working more closely with our employers, to actually find out what skills the employees that they want to hire need to have, and then developing curriculum at our colleges to prepare job seekers to develop those skills. So it's forcing us to be more industry driven as opposed to curriculum driven in just what our faculty want to teach. Instead, we're saying, what do the employers need us to teach, and how do we effectively provide that training so that those who are seeking jobs can get those jobs. This framework is called Doing What Matters for Jobs in the Economy. There's a handout in your materials today that gives you the links to the Chancellor's Office to take a closer look at what's available. We have a link on the site that allows students, that allows faculty, that allows all of us to say, if I was interested in that particular area of expertise or training, what kind of salary would I make? And to then begin to plan accordingly for what kind of career that we want to pursue. I'd also like to just share with you, in the Central Valley, we also have a very unique organization called the Central Valley Higher Education Consortium. And this brings together all of the CEOs and post-secondary education, including publics and privates. And so we try to work on a regional basis together to ensure student success and completion of programs. In addition, we have a grant called the C6 Consortium Grant in our region, and the host for that grant is West Hills College in Coalinga and Lemoore. But we are developing curricula, again, to meet 7 of these industry sectors that allow for accelerated training, that bring our faculty together, work closely with the high schools, and again, attempt to help students get through programs faster and look at other technologies for teaching as opposed to the stand and deliver, but again, work-based learning as well as technology support systems to make that possible.
Well, I want to pull out you mentioned the deputy sector navigators, and sector navigators, which is a really cool title. And I don't know if we have any of them that are here today, but as we talk throughout the day, there are some real live deputy sector and sector navigators in the room.
They're very shy, they're hard to find.
Yes. As we talk today about intermediaries, one, we're used to talk about organizations being intermediaries, but the creation of the deputy sector navigator creates a real opportunity for your company, and you just want to start dealing with somebody in one point of contact in a region that can bring together lots of colleges and hopefully lots of high school partners together over time as well, who understands the language, the needs, the challenges, the pain, the opportunity in your sector. Those deputy sector navigators and sector navigators are a new invention that will allow for greater connectivity between education and industry in a way that's really effective. And so they're designed for educators, but they are equally accessible to the folks in the private sector who are looking to not have to deal with 1,600 different high school principals and college deans. And so those three are here. Be sure to get them, but the links are on the website. So given that the workforce system is not standing still waiting for the education system to figure this out, there's all these resources, all this change in orientation and vision in the K-12 and the community college system. What about employers and the workforce system? How is that changing? And what does real engagement look like? We're used to saying, here's what we want to do in our school district. Now, okay, employers, we decided what we're doing, come on, help us out, give us, write us a check, show up, give us a job shadow tomorrow. What does that really look like in the real world, and how can employers and the workforce system be essential elements in that?
Thanks, it's a good question. We didn't get these questions in advance, by the way, so I had no idea you were going to ask that. And then I'll answer a different question. The doing what matters is incredibly smart, and it is kind of a mystery where the language came from. Vaughn did approach me and she said, what would sound good? And I said, we got to just start doing the shit that matters, stop doing the shit that doesn't matter. And she said, you can't say that in public. And so she shortened it, and that's now doing what matters. So, mystery solved. So we set out, we developed this state strategic plan, and we asked all the 49 local workforce boards around the state to identify target industry sectors. And there are a couple of whims, I think, in the room. I saw Adam Peck earlier from the Clary County Workforce Board, and Blake Council will be here later on from the Fresno Workforce Board. So around the state, they did that in the Central Valley region. I think there are 8 or 9 local workforce boards. Is that right? Up and down the Central Valley. They all identify the same industry sectors, pretty consistent across the state, in fact. Advanced manufacturing, healthcare, everybody chose healthcare as a target sector. Logistics is big, agriculture obviously in the Central Valley, the kind of supply chain around agriculture is big. And the sector navigators, the colleges did the same thing and identified those target sectors. We created the sector navigators. And they're all the same sectors. And the thing that came up for us right away was, holy cow, all of us are going to be chasing the same employers separately. And again, driving them crazy. So let's get our stuff together at the regional level. Let's figure out, number one, what are the sectors we want to focus on in common, which is very important, so we can get consistent. We want to reach out to the K-12 system, which we now have an opportunity to do. But as Javier Romero, who's in my shop, reminded me yesterday, it's not just about developing career pathways and quality training services and thinking regionally and thinking strategically about target sectors. There has to be a sort of bigger vision around this stuff. Those are kind of a means to an end. So what is the thing in your region that you really want to move the dial on in terms of employment and jobs? And I think as a region, you have to get together and decide what that big thing is, because that gives purpose to everything else that you do. So in the Central Valley, for example, it could be you want to really drive the manufacturing sector connected to agriculture, and you can sort of organize your public system around doing that. Or if you want to be more specific and just your manufacturing sector needs a specific skill set, maybe they need a bunch of welders and they just don't have it, and you're going to focus for a time on preparing people, getting certifications for welding, and you're developing a pipeline to do that. Or you want to go bigger picture, you want to move the dial on income mobility, or you want to close the income gap in the Central Valley, or you want to, very specifically, my wife is working on something now of increasing the ability of families to reunify in the foster system. Right, so you've got to have this big vision about what you want to do and have everything else follow that vision. And I think every region should take this on. UC Davis professor, Chris Benner, and Manuel Pastor at USC have been talking about epistemic regions. And I have no idea what that means. But I think it means having a common vision among a broad group of stakeholders at the regional level, where everybody's in agreement of where the region is going to go 5 to 10 years out. And everything lines up behind that. We can't just start with education and training because it needs a broader purpose. See, I did answer a different question, didn't I?
You did.
Okay.
But I was trying to get to epistemic regions anyway. So I'm glad you got there. So we're going to get into your pigs, socks, and epistemic regions are at the core of everyone's notes. We've talked a little bit about regions, and that sounds great, but if I'm a principal or even an assistant superintendent in a district or an architecture firm, that sounds interesting, but I just want to build this one pathway out in my school or in a partnership with a local school. Why should I care? Why should I actually care enough about regional systems? What's the benefit if I'm trying to build out a system of pathways in in my own school? Or is that just something that the big statewide stakeholders and the chancellors tell us about? But why should that, what's the value proposition for folks at the sites and the little companies invest in regional systems as opposed to just saying, I'm going to work on creating an IT pathway at Wenatchee High School? Maybe Lupita?
Because you don't want students to sort of be taken through a pathway in high school, right, that they're really interested in, and then fall off the cliff when they get to higher education, right, when they get to the 2-year certificate. You just don't want them to fall off the cliff. So while it may be very interesting, if it's not an articulated pathway, if you don't have that work-based, work-based experience to build your resume, to get some, everyone knows, in order to get a job, you've got to network, you've got to know someone, you've got to not only have the academics, but you have to have some experience in order to be competitive, right? So you can build a pathway, but if it doesn't lead to a job, that student gets disenfranchised, right? And it leads them to nowhere. It has to lead them to a career, to either post-secondary education or certificate program. We all recognize that most jobs nowadays require some sort of post-secondary education. So I think it's a disservice to that student and to that region if you wanted to build your economy. What I started with is the workforce development, economic development. It makes sense for the entire region and for the state, the nation, and to be competitively and globally competitive.
So
I actually want to add
we can extend that example for a moment. So if you're thinking, maybe I've got this IT pathway that I want to build in Wenatchee, which is in Porterville, not here, but close enough. And then I do want it to articulate to the local community college or to a bunch of community colleges. I want my students to be able to go to Porterville College or come up to Reedley College. And then I want them to be able to connect to the workforce investment system, and you think, I'll just make that happen. And so I wonder, remember having worked on this both here, but also very extensively in Contra Costa, which has done a huge amount of work at the community college to connect with both West Contra Costa University and Antioch and other partners. Is that world possible where every high school comes and every 1,000 pathways come to your door at the college and say, guess what, at Wenatchee, we'd like to build an articulated pathway and we'd like to have a special dual enrollment agreement. Or as part of what we're talking about in these regional systems, creating a way for you at the college district or for the regional WIB to deal with lots of high schools all at once. Right? Is that the value proposition for the region, for the regional approach, is that you'll be able to get access to the regional system of employers and workforce investment and the colleges that don't have the capacity to deal with every single high school in a series of one-offs?
You can ask really hard questions, Christopher. I don't know how to begin, so I'm probably going to be off track and I will turn it over to you. But I believe the regional approach is really important because we have a gap. We have a gap in that if we take the Central Valley, there are jobs that are not filled, that employers need to fill. And we have a large proportion of our communities in poverty who need jobs. So if we focus on the region, we provide the training that the employers need, we train our community members who need the jobs, and they can get to work and the employers can be more successful in their businesses and industry. But I do believe that what you said, by taking a regional approach, it does allow us, I believe, more effectively to work with our high schools. And we don't have, well, I don't want to go there. I have some personal philosophies that I probably shouldn't talk about. So I'll stop there. But I do feel the regional approach allows us to really scale up what we do more effectively, rather than as individual college districts.
Well, Lupita said it, I thought, the way I was going to say it, which is that take the SMUD, the Sacramento Municipal Utilities District in Sacramento. That's in the city of Sacramento. Its headquarters are located in the city of Sacramento. Well, you wouldn't want to limit a energy pathway to the 3 schools, high schools, just around SMUD. It's a regional employer. Large employers tend to be regional. And thus, by definition, the approach has to be reasonable. But the other thing I was going to add is, just as a preview for what you're going to hear the rest of the day, without giving it away, of course, And that is that we don't have to invent this all from scratch. You're going to hear about Boston, you're going to hear about Switzerland, you're going to hear about the European model, you're going to hear about the role of intermediary organizations and the major business organizations and associations taking a leadership role in helping to match schools with employers. And so there are models out there, and we need to take the best of those models and we need to copy them, and we'll be more successful. So this is hard stuff, because the problem here in our state, in our country, just to philosophize for 1 second, is that our culture does not really support this. This is not what we're about. We are siloed. We have an education system. Community colleges come as close as anyone to connecting with the economy, but even they're separate from the economy. And then we have jobs, and we've got businesses, and our public policy is siloed. We talk about tax credits and tax policy and business incentives, wholly separate from education. What we're attempting to do here, we're all diving into the cold water together. What we're trying to do here is to connect the two in a real way that allows a young person at age 14 or 15 to say, if I work hard enough and do my part, there is going to be a pathway that leads to more education and a real job at the end of that, without all the disconnection that exists today.
Cold water, about $250 million divided a lot of wetsuits. $100 million from the feds too. So before we feel too put upon by all this work, I mean, the opportunity is also enormous, and all the alignment that we've heard from the entire panel, from the investment from the workforce investment world, the investment in Common Core, the Doing What Matters. There's so many resources and so much attention and focus on this that it's the moment to strike. If you've been interested in this work for a long time, there's never been a better time to move forward with this. Senator Sundberg, I want to return, because earlier you hinted that maybe we'll come back for some more money. You might have said another $250 million. Well, that's not magic, and you can't make any promises. You'll go and fight the good fight potentially next year in the budget negotiations. Those typically happen, and you know this better than me, May or whatever. And so if we wanted to say as a field working on this important work, we want to make sure that Senator Steinberg has the most wind at his sails on May 1st, when he goes into the Capitol, down to the governor's office, and meets with the speaker and the Republican leaders and say, this is what I want, and look what's happening. What do we need to be teeing up? And we've got both the applications for the Career Pathways Trust, but also the AB 790 linked learning pilots that Lupita's department is, and the Superintendent Twiller's department is managing. There's several districts in them doing. We've got the Youth Career Connect money that will have been allocated by the feds by that point in time. All the work that's happening along with control accountability, the work that the Workforce Investment Strategic Plan is undertaking as well, Doing What Matters. All of this is happening. So what can we try to drive towards by the beginning of May that will help you make the strongest case possible for even bigger investment in this work?
Well, here's something that I didn't mention yesterday in Sacramento, but I thought of it. I don't know if there are any members of the media here. I know we sent out, press releases and really tried to pump this up, because this session, the other sessions are oversubscribed. Not everybody who wanted to come can come. I think it's really important at the regional level, at the local level, that you sit with your editorial boards, at your papers, that you try to generate some stories of existing pathways and what this money could do to elevate what you're already doing, because that kind of attention, and we're working on it on our end too, of course, is really, really important. That this is seen as a national model, that this is seen as new and innovative. Having said that, that's one thing. The other thing that I think the policymakers and the governor will look at, since May is too early to actually evaluate the success of any of the new money, will be the quality of the applications for the trust fund. And I'm sure that together we will highlight the best applications. But to show this is what we weren't able to fund because the demand was so great, and this is what we are funding, will leave policymakers hopefully with the appetite to say, geez, we ought to do another tranche here so that we can fund what didn't get funded that was worthy and valuable. And it's pretty simple and basic. It's the amount of energy and passion that goes into our work over the next number of months and publicizing it. We can't be shy if we want to build something larger.
Yeah, and you know what some of the skeptics believed is that we couldn't bust down these silos. That, okay, that's a great idea, but but not really. The education people and the real employers and the unions and the colleges, they won't be able to really do something big. We'll make this big investment. We'll give you a shot at this at this number, but we've all seen this movie before. They'll talk about it, nothing will happen. And so I just to add an exclamation to your point, I think yes, if we see really visible, if your colleagues and the governor see really visible, deep partnerships that are where there's real skin in the game by all the folks and strong action plans that are scalable and sustainable beyond just one-time money, that case will be a powerful case that this time we're doing it differently in a way that will really make a difference for the economy and for the students. All right, so our panel is at. I wanted to say thank you to Senator Steinberg, to Deputy Superintendent Cortez Alcala, Chancellor Blue, and Executive Director Tim Rainey for their leadership in this field, for all of the work that they've put into bringing us to this point. They're now passing the baton to us to create real change. Well, some of them will still be working on it, but to create the kind of real change that we're envisioning. But thank you very much to our panel.
Thank you all.